left, right.
This was a fun episode. We're just talking about life in 2023, dating in 2023, and just really what's going on with us. So, sharing some personal stuff, some personal stories. Hey, let me know you're out there. Give me a thumbs up. Give me a comment. Would love to know that you are watching this, and I will see you on the other end. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Of course, it's good.
Cheers.
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 All right, we are live. Welcome to SipTalk. This is episode 210. My name is Justin DiGiulio out of my basement in New Jersey, joined by James, the Bartender Boswell, philosopher, retired professional referee, bartender, and most exciting of all, accountant, James, the Bartender Boswell, whose biggest handicap is that he is always correct. James, how's it hanging down there in sunny South Carolina?
We prefer to refer to it as handy-capable.
You can't. Well, you're into. On that note, I want to tell you about the word retard. I was taking a shower. Everybody says they get good thoughts in the shower, and I realized that the word retard has now transcended being inappropriate. Okay, so when you used to say that's retarded, people are like, "Oh, you mean you're making fun of retarded people because it's slow," and now retarded people are no longer allowed to be called retarded, right? That's just not a
Mentally handicapped or mental disability or
the word lexicon. The word retarded is no longer in the lexicon when it comes to describing people, right? So now
it is. It's considered like an offensive slur.
It would be it's almost transcended that. I feel like it wouldn't be used. It wouldn't be used anymore. So now. And what it means, if you say that's retarded, you mean like, oh, that's messed up, like it's slow or it's behind the curve or something like that. Now, when you say that's retarded, that's still effectively what you mean. That's slow, that's messed up, that's behind the curve.
Yeah.
Like how gay used to mean happy and joyful and excited, and now it meant homosexual, but it's almost becoming wrong to call homosexual people gay in some circles, in the utmost of wokeness circles.
Oh yeah, but I mean, those people can screw off because
but they're earlier. I've
got friends that are gay, and they'll describe themselves as gay. You're like, yeah, I'm a gay man. Whatever, who cares?
Yeah, exactly. That's most people. It's the people that don't occupy that group that are standing up and saying this is offensive. Like like the guy. There was an interview I saw on YouTube a couple weeks ago. It was a guy with a sombrero with a big mustache walking around, and he walked up to a half dozen white people and said, "Hey, is this costume offensive?" And they're like, "Yeah, I can't believe you're doing that." And he walked up to a half dozen Mexican people and he said, "Hey, is this costume offensive?" And they're like, "No, it's fucking awesome. Like, it's right on the money." So, oh no, we just got banned for hateful behavior on TikTok. I don't even know what we said.
I'm probably using the word retard actually. Even though, so the subreddit Wall Street Bets used to like revel in its members calling themselves and others retarded, and they've actually shifted away from that, which I actually think is a good thing because they've changed the word that they use now, and I think it's even better. They now talk about highly regarded members. Like, this member is in high regards with the sub or whatever. And actually, the more you think about it, the better it is, because one, you're no longer using a term that could be considered offensive. It's not going to get you banned on TikTok. But two, like, it sounds like a compliment.
So we got to introduce a topic. I think I think because we.
But that's what I've been using that a lot more recently, and it has wonderful results. To say, yeah, this is a highly regarded employee at our company.
Because there's this sarcastic element. So to introduce the topic today, we are talking about absolutely nothing. We're talking about 2023. We're talking about the new year that we're now almost a month into, and we're talking about what living life is like. We're making our own speculations and observations from our own personal perspectives of the year 2023. I think most of you guys are going to agree with me, and James, although James and I don't always agree, but either way, we got some extensive notes about dating in South Carolina.
I'm not even doing. This is about a friend.
we have additional notes about raising children and the potential they have in their lives, and then we have some notes.
I don't know if we want to get fully into that one though.
And then we have some notes on liminality and liminal spaces, and a decent list of movies that I'm curious how James is going to expand on this. But being SipTalk, and now that we've been banned from TikTok, I'm about to pour a drink. I'm curious what you got over there.
Bush Ice. I got one left in the fridge before I have to restock. Grocery store was out of Bush Ice the last time I went.
So this is the funny thing about laws. In New Jersey, it's illegal to sell booze at a grocery store. So you have to go specifically to a liquor store. So I'm a little jealous, man.
In South Carolina, it's against the law to not buy alcohol when you go in a grocery store.
Well, these are different states. I blame Lindsey Graham. So where should we?
Let's just start from the top about so my friend recently ended a relationship and has been back on the dating scene.
Okay, hold up. So this is in Charleston, South Carolina.
Yes.
And your friend is a guy or girl?
Guy.
And he is how old?
39 or 40, maybe.
Okay, so late 30s. Deep late 30s.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I just ask, and I don't know any of these details, can I just ask how long was his previous relationship?
I'm going to say probably about 3 years.
Now, all right, and I made the assumption that he's straight, but is it?
Yeah, he's straight.
Okay. So what brings this to our attention today in the podcast that you want to talk about your friend's dating?
A couple funny stories or lines. So first off, I'll throw out one. He went on a few dates with a girl and talked about how great she was and how she had shared a lot of his interests and all this other stuff. And let me preface this: I'm doing this out of order. In his last relationship, the woman that he was dating had a kid, and they lived together. And after that relationship ended,
her and the kid, or him and the woman and the child?
All of them lived together.
Oh boy,
she moved in with him.
That is very complicated. With the child?
Yes.
Full custody, part-time custody?
Full.
Oh, all right. And then they just broke up and uprooted this child's life.
Well, yeah, her and the kid moved to a different place.
Okay, all right.
So after that relationship ended, my friend said, I'm not going to date a woman with a kid again because of all the problems of how the kid gets in the way of the relationship, even though her daughter, a young kid, maybe 4, 5, 6 years old, was a really good kid, well behaved, pleasant to be around. But it's still just if we want to go on a date, we want to go on a trip.
When you're dating somebody who has children, that dynamic is nowhere near when you're dating somebody who's single and doesn't have children. So there's just another element that he's been frustrated with, having dated somebody, and not that he didn't like the daughter or the relationship was terrible, just given the opportunity to choose. And he's telling you over a beer, his preference moving forward. And given that he has an unlimited or perceptibly unlimited supply of new potentials, he's going to pursue somebody who doesn't have a child.
Correct. He's saying, I'm not going to date a woman who has kids again. I said, okay, that's been my stance. But he starts dating this girl that he met on some online dating site. And he's talking about how great she is, how she shares all these interests and everything. And I asked him, I said, okay, so you just saw her tonight. When are you going to see her again? Tomorrow or something? He's like, probably not until next weekend. And I said, well, why? He's like, well, she's got a kid. And I said,
Is this the first person he went on a date with?
I don't think so, but it was the first one that he talked about like having like a really good date with her. And so the first one that he talked about where
He was
like
probably
he
having a
felt like
blast.
he really clicked with her.
He was probably having a blast because it was their only night off that
Well,
morning.
maybe, but here's what I said back to him, and I think you'll like this. I said, "Look, man, I'm not telling you what to do or what not to do, but I will tell you what you've told me, which is you said you wouldn't date somebody who had kids. Now, like for me, that's a hard rule that I do not break. I just say if you have a kid, I cannot date you. And I said further, I have a bunch of rules about like how I conduct myself in the world, and all of those rules are sourced from previous errors that I made. And those rules are to prevent me from making the same mistake again. So when
Hold on that note, though, I think especially as an adult, and the transcendence from effect a teenager or living at home to being an adult, creating a list of rules that you don't break, I think is really really important. And there are some rules that maybe
you can adjust.
you can, but some you can bend time to time.
Mhm.
And like I don't generally eat cake. Now, if somebody's birthday and somebody puts a piece of cake in front of me, like I'll eat it. I love cake. I could eat a whole fucking birthday cake full of cake. But like if I go to a restaurant and I look at the dessert menu, I'm not ordering cake. If I go to a grocery store, there's cake, I don't buy it. I go to a bodega, I get a sandwich, and there's cake, I don't buy it. But that would be a rule that you might bend time to time. And
Sure.
then you have other harder rules. Now, it sounds like this guy proposed this as a hard rule. For you, it is a hard rule.
Yeah, for me it is a hard rule, but I said, "Look, man, I'm not telling you what not to do, but like when you said it, it sounded like you were kind of establishing a rule for yourself. So you need to think where that comes from." And he comes back at me with, "Well, she has so many other positive qualities. I just don't feel like I could ever meet somebody like this again, and she'd be a great girlfriend." And what I said to Tom was, "Tom, there are probably plenty of guys out there that would be a great girlfriend for me, but I don't date guys. That's a rule."
It's just happy that you told me this, but I don't know if it was on the phone or it was on the last podcast. But no, and I think that's the hard rule aspect of it. But also, they didn't know each other. They didn't have an established relationship. They'd gone out once or twice, you said, and he just made this declaration against his hard stance.
Yeah. Well, what's also funny is, so that relationship, however short lived it was, didn't work out, and he says that she basically told him, "Look, I just don't know if there's chemistry here," and he says to me,
This is the newest one with the kid.
"Yeah, yeah, yeah."
Oh boy.
But anyways, like what he said next was, "I just don't understand it because like before she was talking about how great we were together and all this other stuff, and then like all of a sudden she just changes her mind and says something different." And I say, "Tom, let me introduce you to the concept of women."
That's so. Let me redirect this back to our topic. That goes back to 2023. Nobody has this word as my bond. Nobody has I said this. I stand by it anymore. People will say something and then just change their mind the next day.
Now,
If I
granted, she owes him nothing because like they've been on two, maybe three dates, so like there's no commitment.
well, 2 or 3 dates is very blah. That's bullshit.
Right.
But still, somebody. But for me, the thing is, if I was going to say something, I would stand by it. And if the next day I changed my mind or I just happened to say something else and you challenged me on it, I would defend myself or be like, you know what, you're right. I'm full of shit. My mistake. But I feel like you know what the issue is with 2023 is when you say something and then the next day you say something. When someone says something, the next day they say something different, and you call them on it. What they do is say, "I never said that thing. I never said that original thing. What are you talking about? I've always said this."
We have it on tape.
Right, yeah. Even if you had it on tape, they're still going to double down. So I never said that.
Yeah.
That's I think the issue but either way, that's not the issue with your friend.
All right. So I got one or
Already
two
used
more
his real
things.
name? Did we already use his real name?
What?
His real name? Did we already use it?
I don't think so.
Okay, good. Let's keep it that way.
All
right.
One more thing. So this is interesting to me because I want to know where you fall on this. He was telling me about how in Charleston there's a Facebook page for
Oh,
women only,
I read what you
where
were. All right.
women can post a picture of like a guy that they've matched with on the Tinder or the Bumble, and post that picture and see if any other women on the page have been on a date with that person and kind of get feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And like
So it's
it's
a rating. It's
basically
a ratings. It's a rating page for
a
women.
rating page, or possibly like an early warning system of like, don't go on a date with this guy
In its best
because
state. In its best state, it's an early warning system.
yeah. And for me, it makes me think of a line from one of Bill Burr's stand-up comedy routines where he talks about how women are basically like a union.
Okay, go ahead. Go. I don't know the comedy, and I'm sure your delivery of it will not be nearly as funny.
No,
But
I'm
I'm
not going to try and imitate it, but just like the concept that women are a union is funny to me. But he was complaining about how it's unfair for his picture to get posted on this page, and for women to be able to like
wait, hold up.
talk about him behind his back.
Was his picture actually put on the page?
Yeah, apparently, because he said that like one of the girls that he went on a date with, or like after going on a date, she's like, there's this Facebook page, like, and you're on it, and he gets all mad. And I told him, I was like, dude, you
Should.
need to not care about this,
Well,
because
what did they say?
I don't know.
Oh,
But
that's what the thing is. If what they said
I'm
had,
guessing it wasn't positive, because he says that like one of the girls was trying to like say some positive things about him, and she got kicked out of the group. But what I told them was like, if I'm
was it,
going on a if I
what,
happen to go on a date with somebody, and like on our first date, and like we're at the bar or the restaurant or wherever, and she says, there's this Facebook page, and like there like I put your picture up there to like see what other women had to say if like any of them had dated you. My response would be like, I hope I got 1 star. I hope I got all 1 stars.
well, you know what? You know why you would say that is because you set the expectations low so you can surprise people versus having high expectations where you
Well, and
disappoint.
also like I feel like that line is just showing like a nonchalance. Like, it's funny. I don't care. Like, give me 1 stars. It doesn't affect me.
But so the thing is about like negative reviews or somebody talking shit about you, it only should hurt you if it's true. Like people talk a lot of shit about me. I come around to hear it here and there. Most of that shit doesn't bother me because I'm confident with who I am. And if somebody does happen to talk some shit, then I'm like, oh, you know what? Fuck, you're right. Then that's something I work on,
Mhm.
or I have the value proposition. I'll just deal with being shitty at that, and I'm fine with not putting in the work. It's kind of like not being in perfect physical
It's like
condition.
why I
Right?
don't dance.
But yeah, exactly. You're like I value not being uncomfortable and flailing my body around over flailing my body around being uncomfortable and making other people happy.
Right, and I look at it as like the work that I would have to put in to get good at dancing is not worth it.
Yeah. Where are we going next?
Well, let me see. We can skip over this other. Well, very briefly, I'll talk about this. He talked about like this last weekend. He had a date with somebody else, and he was saying that she had opened up to him about how she had been she had gone through some kind of abuse or trauma. Oh, I can't say what his name is. He wouldn't say what the abuse was, and I was like, honestly, I don't want to know. If it's so bad that you don't want to talk about it, then I sure don't want to know. But it's if you've been through some kind of trauma or whatever, like, you need to have the self-awareness to realize that maybe getting into a relationship right now isn't the right thing for you, because
I've always found that if you had a lot of trauma, you should just dive directly into a relationship.
yeah. But he was talking about how like they'd only hung out like 2 or 3 times, and he came over to my place to play some pool, and she was mad at him because like he wouldn't hang out with her that night, or like he wasn't available, and he's like, I'm playing pool with my friend, like, and she was laying all this guilt on him about like, well, I just feel like I'm thrown away by guys. And I was like, Tom, oh damn, all right, fine, his name's Tom.
We could have edited that out, but still, this is live.
Like, Tom,
So you told-
like, you have to recognize that, like, you know what, you can't fix everybody. Some people just aren't ready for a relationship, and what you might be signing up for here is a very large role as an unpaid therapist, and you're unqualified for that. I'm unqualified for that.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the cool thing about dating is that what you're doing is you're putting feelers out there to find out if somebody is a good match for you. The problem is, and probably especially down there, is if you have a perceived uh, low number of options, then you're quick to jump to and fall in love and see your life with somebody when it's the third date or something. And that person, it's one thing if like everything's aligned, all the criteria boxes are checked by the third date, but if that person is like literally checking the red flag box, in Tom's case having a child, when he just said I'm not going to date somebody who has a child, then you're not understanding the concept of dating. You can date someone and not be in a relationship with them, in an official relationship. Your relationship would be your dating, right?
Yeah, but you're looking to establish a relationship, and so like your first 1, 2, 3 dates you're really looking to weed people out and be like, let's find the things that don't work for me, and like disqualifying somebody isn't a bad thing. And like real quick, like
It
a
should be a
couple
good
years ago,
It should be a good thing. It should be you're saving each other. You're saving each other, saying this isn't going to work. It was nice not knowing you, and
Mhm.
never know you. Have a
I was on a date a couple years ago, and like 4 or 5 drinks in, she brings up the topic of kids, and I was like, I don't ever want to have kids. Not something that I value. And she just says, okay, well, that's where we just remain friends.
cool.
And I was
That's
like,
how to go.
fine. I
Cool, good.
wasn't mad. I'm like, sweet.
Cool.
Found out. I
Communication.
found out on date 1.
Yeah, rather than the end of year one or something like
Mhm.
that.
And I never talked to her again. I'm not mad at her. I don't feel like I wasted my time. Like it was, I met somebody and there's something that didn't work. No big deal.
But especially if that's a deal breaker for her or for you, you want that shit cleared up really early on before you go down, the rabbit hole of a relationship and waste all of your time. Um, man.
So like when people ask me now, like about the whole kids thing, I was like, I will happily torpedo a date 10 minutes in by saying I don't want to have kids. If that's good, if that's going to end the date, awesome.
I think especially at our age that needs to be really clear because there are still. I mean, we're almost at the age where it's not going to be possible anymore.
Yeah, my mom was telling me about that. Where she's like, you might need to like relax your standards a little bit about not dating a woman who has kids. Like if they have older kids or the kids are self sufficient or whatever.
Oh,
And
that's the other side of the coin. Yeah.
well, yeah, if they're like their teens or something. And I said, no. She's like, you just need to think about compromising a little bit. No, not going to.
Oh boy. Well, I mean, it just depends on how bad you want to be in a relationship.
Not bad enough to bring a kid into it.
All right. So speaking of kids, should we move forward?
Sure.
All right. So kids and their potential. When you're a child, you have limitless potential. You can be anything you want. You can do anything you want.
Can you put the image up that I sent in the text message to you and Rosh?
Is that? Oh, hold on. Damn, that's going to take me a second. All right, hold up. Let me just bring my mouse onto the thing and do the thing with the image. All right, so we get a group message. This is actually really funny, by the way. But now I got to open the actual image. This is about potential. All right, here we go. Mouse up, mouse over. This is James' perception of
This is my contribution to the potential discussion.
childhood potential. Potential. Not everyone gets to be an astronaut when they grow up, and for whatever reason, it's a picture of French fries. So I don't quite get it. I get it, but I don't.
No, I think you should get it.
The French fry relevance is lost on me.
It shouldn't be.
What am I missing on the French fry reference?
Well, it's not a picture of an astronaut.
Okay, it doesn't mean you get to work at McDonald's.
That's
Fuck,
the implication.
Fuck me. I'm an idiot. So, but I think that's the reality if you don't develop the math skills or the quantum physics skills to become an astronaut, if you don't have the physical endurance to become an astronaut, it's not going to happen.
Becoming an astronaut is one of the most difficult things to do.
Well, becoming an astronaut who gets launched into outer space, there's got to be a lot of astronauts that actually never leave the Earth's gravitational
That's
pull.
also true, but like the amount of skills that you need to have as an astronaut is insane. Like here's how crazily smart astronauts have to be. I think this is in like the 60s or 70s, when one of the Apollo missions was trying to like re-enter Earth's orbit and like re-enter the atmosphere. Like
Mhm.
some of their navigational systems failed, right? So the computer navigation, like, and sure, it was 70s computers, but like even 70s computers could help you out a lot in terms of making sure you come in at the right angle and don't burn up, right?
Mhm.
So the computer system fails while they're like navigating their way through the Earth's atmosphere. So they need to like know that they're coming in at the right angle. You know how the astronauts were able to do this like without the aid of computers?
Trigonometry.
The astronauts used the stars and the position of the stars to like triangulate their angle and their velocity and everything to make sure so they basically use the stars for navigation in real time at like 15,000 miles per hour heading in like burning up into the atmosphere. So like using basically ancient techniques of navigation, and they had to do that. They didn't have charts. They didn't have books. They had the knowledge of what the stars were supposed to look like and their orientation to navigate back through.
What you're telling me sounds perceptively impossible. I couldn't perceive, nor do I have the ability to figure out how to do that. And guess what? Not an astronaut. So
Yeah.
if,
So
if
it's
somebody is listening, so if anybody who's listening to this is like, oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, this you know, we got what's the meter the measuring device called where you kind of gauge
sextant.
Sextant. Like that's what you actually need, right? So if you're like, oh yeah, we just dial the sextant to 60, degrees and and yeah, no problem. I got it. Maybe you're astronaut material, but if you're 7 years old and you really want to be an astronaut and you're struggling to read, bro, probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's reality. If you're 15 years old and you were actually, James, how tall are you? 5'11"?
Yeah.
You're 5'11". You were short for a long time.
Yeah, I didn't grow until very late.
Really late, yeah, which is wild. I can't even remember back then.
Yeah, when I was 15, I was still like 5'3".
But I was going to say 4'9". If you're
No, I was 4'9" when I was 14.
not I wasn't talking about you, but I was going to say if you're 4'9" and you're 15 years old, like the NBA is probably not in your future, right?
No.
So the idea that you can be anything that you want to be, you can do anything that you want to do, and this is, by the way, this is a Rosh topic. This is a Rosh soundbite or idea that he sent to us that we're about to dissect. I was told that as a kid. I am guessing you were probably told that as a kid. Do you think people are still telling their kids that?
According to Rosh, yes.
Well, when was the last time he was born?
Well, he's talking about somebody he knows who's got a daughter that's a teenager that has probably been told you can be anything you want to be when you grow up. And according to Rosh, this teenage daughter acts very entitled because she's not really been told no.
Well, that's, I always thought there was a benefit of kind of being raised really well and having everything handed to you, is that once you hit adulthood, that's what you're used to. And then it gets effectively taken away from you. And then you basically do what you need to do to reclaim that and make it happen for yourself. Whereas, if everything isn't handed to you when you're growing up and life isn't simple and nothing serves you with a spoon, and then you have to develop those skills and make it happen yourself, whatever those goals may be. But you never got that taste of the silver spoon beforehand. Now, to me, in the example I just gave, the first scenario sounds easier.
It's easier for the first half.
Well, no shit. But Rash's question is, is it harmful to kids to tell them that they can be anything when they grow up? Do you think that's a net negative?
Yes.
Why? Because do you think it breeds depressed adults who?
I think you need to set realistic expectations. So your comment about if you're 15 or 16 years old and you're still 4'9" or 5'1", maybe playing in the NBA isn't in your cards. I had when I was a substitute teacher many years ago, I had some students that were struggling, and like they and sometimes their parents would say, "I don't need to worry about school because I'm going to play in the NFL." And I'm like, you might be a decent player on your middle school football team. You might
Hmm.
be you might be a good player on your basketball team. But first of all, if you take the if you look at the way that the numbers break down,
It's
you get
effectively winning the lottery. It's effectively winning the lottery.
it's about 1 in 100 players from high school will go on to play college. One out of maybe 1 to 5 players in college, 1 to 5 out of 100 players in college will go on to play professionally. And of those 1 to 5 players that go on to play professionally, probably maybe 10 to 20% of them will ever make it to the absolute top league. So you're looking at like a 1 in 10 to 1 in 30,000 chance of you're good in high school, therefore you will be a pro. And so I told him, I was like, look, these are the numbers, and I know this because I work in professional sports. And two, even if you are the 1 in 10,000 talent, there's always the possibility that before you make it professional, be it in high school or college, your knee goes out.
Well, exactly. Or your shoulder, or
Or yeah,
whatever.
you have an injury or some, and it doesn't even have to be your fault. An opponent hits you in the knee, and that's the end of your career. And if you didn't have a backup plan, you're screwed.
I recently completed the series of the TV show Friday Night Lights. I don't know if you've ever seen this TV show.
I know of it.
It's a phenomenal TV show. It's not really just about football. I would argue football occupies 20% of the show and the theme
Football
of
is
it.
what the show revolves around,
Yeah, it
but
revolves around it, but we revolve around the sun. How much of your day you deal talking about the fucking sun, right?
no,
But
you take the sun away and then things get hairy.
you take football away, TV show doesn't work.
Right.
But the TV show revolves around a Texas town that is very football based. The high schoolers, yes, it's a top football town in Texas. Texas takes high school football very, very, very seriously. The teammates are treated like God. First string are treated like God. You could be 16 years old, first string football team, walk into a bar, they're gonna serve you. Walk into a convenience store, they're not gonna card you. You're basically God. You're walking on water, and the issue is that either these guys are set up for a successful future in the NFL, which is a you know
Some of them.
it's a pipe dream, really.
Mhm.
But the vast majority of them are being set up to have a very, very difficult adulthood because they think that they are the shit. And when high school ends, if they end up going off to college, maybe you're a great high school quarterback, but how does that play in college? Your third string quarterback? How does that play into the NFL? Right. So the issue is that if you're a top quarterback in high school sports and high school football, that doesn't translate to the real world. It translates in your ecosystem, in the high school ecosystem, but it doesn't translate outside of that to being as important as you feel in that moment.
Because even if you're a top quarterback in college, every year there's probably only like 5 or 6 quarterbacks in all of college that are really like elite. So you could be the best high school quarterback in the entire country, and then all of a sudden you go and play for a college and you're 72nd out of 128 college quarterbacks,
But
which
how
that's
does
still really good, but
Sure, yeah. But how does that play into your psyche, right? Like you go from being number one in your county, and
Yeah, to now you're just an average quarterback in because as you move up in rank, like the competition increases, and like to be at the top every single time you move up a tier is a remarkably difficult achievement.
well, yeah, it's effectively like you win the local lottery for $10,000, and then you win the Win for Life, where you get $1,000 a week, and then you win like the Mega Millions. Like hitting all, going from one step to the next is probably the definition of the word, probably impossible.
Well, yeah,
Probably
but
very low.
if you have enough people, like eventually one person will be able to do it, or a couple people will be able to do it. But like, and they get all the attention, and it's the whole survivorship bias thing, where you look at the people that made it, and you don't pay attention to the thousands who didn't.
I was having a conversation today about climbing Mount Everest. I was saying, it'd be so cool to climb Mount Everest. But then I think about the people that have died climbing Mount Everest and realize that they have way more expertise in climbing, probably better physical stamina, probably better physical fitness, and whatever their background is, probably better than me. And they still died climbing Mount Everest.
Yeah.
Their bodies weren't
Although at this point,
frozen. They're just frozen to the side of the hiking trail.
at this, well, for one, like there are a number of dead bodies on the path to the peak of Mount Everest that serve as landmarks of like, oh, that's green boots. Like you're 1,000 feet from the peak because they can't move the bodies; it's too high.
If you're Native
But
American
also,
name, green boots.
that is actually one of the landmarkers.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But like at this point, climbing Mount Everest is much more a function of having a lot of money to spend because you're paying for the permits and you're paying for the Sherpas to carry your shit.
Team, yeah, supplies and team, yeah. So supplies and the people that carry your supplies.
Yeah, so like if you've got enough money, the only thing that you really need to carry is like your coat and your boots, which are attached to you, and like your oxygen mask.
I mean, yeah, like golfing. Like you have somebody carrying your clubs, et cetera, and suggesting to you what club to use if you have a good caddy. Speaking of Caddyshack, back to kids and their potential.
When you mentioned Caddyshack, I bought a leaf blower the other week.
You bought a leaf blower?
Yeah, and it just made me think of the scene in Caddyshack where Bill Murray, who's the groundskeeper, like a woman comes into like his shop, and he realizes, oh, there's a woman in here. I need to clean up, so he fires up the leaf blower.
Did I tell you the time I used the leaf blower in my house? Did I tell you this?
No.
So I had replastered the part of the basement. And when you plaster, you have to sand down the ridges, because you have the plaster knife, right? It's a big, broad knife. But as you scrape across the new plaster, you leave kind of lines, and if you're good at it, you don't leave as many lines or as many indentations. But if you're not good at it, as I'm looking at my ceiling, I can tell you I'm not. You leave kind of some bumps or ridges. So after the plaster dries, you come through with a sandpaper block and you sand it down. The issue is that it creates this white dust, this super fine dust, and it just falls everywhere. I've 20 pictures of me just covered, with this blue dust. I look like Casper the Friendly Ghost. It ends up in your lungs, it ends up in your nose, it ends up in your ears. It's fucking disgusting. So I had this great idea last wintertime after repairing the ceiling in my basement. I had plastered it, sanded it down, and there was this dust everywhere. So my plan was, I'm going to open the door. And James, the room beside my garage, right? So I was going to open the door to the outside. I stood at the top of the stairs from the next floor above with my leaf blower. I opened the door downstairs and started blowing. The issue was that it was wintertime and the cold air from the outside outweighed in density the warm air from inside the house.
Came rushing in.
And as I kind of disturbed the scene, this heavier air came inside and carried all the dust which was in the basement to every corner and crevice of the basement and then the second floor of the house as the dust mixed with the cold air and the warm air and continued in altitude into the second floor. And there
So I
was
can
this
imagine you just standing at the top of your stairs, scratching your head, saying, "Huh, guess I didn't think that one through."
I didn't stand there for very long. I rushed down the stairs, tried to aim the shit out. It was a clusterfuck, and it was really bad. And I ended up in this white silt across the majority of my home for like a month, even though we dusted everything. It was a total disaster. I think we're losing. Track. We talked about kids and their potential. Now we're talking about not a weed whacker,
Leaf blowers.
a leaf blower. So
Well,
kids and their
all right.
potential. So I think the real issue is how do you inspire your kids and how do you create the image in their mind that everything is a possibility within a certain range without overemphasizing within a certain range where they start developing self-doubt and saying, you know what, I'm not going to pursue that because I'm not that already. And I think that's the issue with raising children in general. But for the longest time, it's just said you tell your kids they can do whatever they want. You build up your kids in this reality that isn't reality. And then they hit the real world and they're not your problem.
Well,
so how does that change? How has it changed?
I think it's changed a lot because of social media, because kids can now see other kids doing things or seeing other people doing things, and like they can start measuring themselves against what's honestly a completely unrealistic
But
expectation.
I think they're already measuring themselves. And by measuring themselves, they're saying, I'm just getting started, but this is the goal.
Yeah, that's the mature way to look at it.
The problem is when you've been looking at social media for the last 4.5 years and your peers are doing shit that you're not doing, and then you're just watching social media and doing
Yeah, but like you could also, like, let's say you've got a kid who gets into, I don't know, chess,
Okay.
and they just learned the game, they're not good at it because they just learned. And then they see, and let's say your kid's, I don't know, 12, and they see other 12-year-old kids that are playing in tournaments and winning against like adult players. And they look and be like, "Well, why can't I be that good?" And they see on social media this 12-year-old kid wins whatever tournament, and they get down on themselves because they're like, "I can't even beat like another kid my age, let alone like a professional chess player." But the thing is, those social media posts aren't showing that the 12-year-old that won that tournament has been studying chess since before they could read.
Well, that is the greater danger in social media overall.
And it's true of anything. You look at a kid who's able, like a high school like runner that's running a 13-minute 5K, and you go out run and you can't run a 25-minute 5K. You're like, well, shit, why can't I do that?
Running it in like under 12 these days. So,
but and then you say, well, shit, why can't I run a 13-minute 5K? And what you're not seeing is that the kid that's running the 13-minute 5K has been running every day for the last 8 years.
Dude, think about a 13-minute 5K and how fast that is. And just how beyond our ability that is. Even as teenagers, how beyond our ability.
So the pace of a 13-minute 5K, I could not keep that pace for 400 meters.
Exactly, which is one lap around the track. Me neither. 13-minute 5K is 3 miles at just over
4:30 or so.
Just over
4:20.
No, less than 4:30.
Yeah, 4:20 or so.
Yeah, under 4:20 because you have that extra.
I don't think many high schoolers are running a 13-minute, but a 14-minute 5K they're definitely doing.
All right, we got to get on to our last.
Let me just sum up. Like, social media allows unfair comparisons because you're seeing people that are at the pinnacle of whatever, and what you're not seeing is how hard they had to work to get there. And you're thinking, well, I can do that, but you're not realizing how much work it takes to actually do that.
But that's also in line with what we've been telling kids for the last 4 generations. You can be or do anything you want, and I think fewer and fewer people are saying that to their kids, but you do have social media, which sort of implies you can do anything you want, except you don't get to see behind the scenes, which is what you're saying. We got to hit this next topic, which is called liminality. So, would you like to define liminality, or you want me to take a stab at it?
I'm kind of interested to see what your guess is on it.
So, the liminality is a new word for me. Liminality to me, I have no idea, actually, but I think it means a degree of changing or the change, like limit, something about like the limit or something. Am I on to?
The first half was pretty close. So
Okay.
like liminality is all about
It's
like
about change.
transition.
Okay,
And
transition.
so like a liminal space is going to be a space that is used for transition. So an easy example would be a hallway, but I think a better example is an airport where
So airport would be fully liminal, minus
yeah,
this.
like the inside of an airport where like you got the restaurants and the seats and the screens and all the other stuff that's in an airport, like being in an airport is a fully liminal experience unless you're a worker there. But like
That's
if
why.
you're a traveler in an
I get
airport,
that, except for the people that work there. So it's
yeah,
not. It's 99% liminal.
yeah, like an airport is like the for me like the easiest example of a liminal space. And so like and there's all sorts of examples of this, and like there's a whole like area of photography of just kind of like capturing empty liminal spaces, and like the good examples of it will leave you with this awkward feeling.
Of
Well, I mean, like, to be circular here, liminality. Like you're left feeling like you're seeing a space that's supposed to be full of people transitioning, and it's
Mhm.
empty. So you're just like this feels incomplete. There's something wrong here. That like so. For example, the opening scene to Vanilla Sky, when he gets in the Ferrari and drives around Times Square, that's completely empty, and how strange that scene is.
Mhm.
That's a liminal scene.
Yeah. Okay. I get that. Vanilla Sky, by the way, great movie, great Tom Cruise movie.
I don't know if
Uh,
it's a great movie.
I think it is because I think there's actually a lot of underlying attention to detail, similar to Fight Club, that you don't notice, and it also plays with your mind if you're really in tune with the movie.
I just
I
remember watching the movie and feeling frustrated with it at times.
in what sense? In the behavior of the main character?
Partially.
Yeah.
I need to rewatch it. It was a while ago.
It was a very human experience to a future world that we with technology that we don't quite have. Although I do think we're about a decade off of the idea of kind of transplanting your brain into a digital world. Maybe more than maybe 2 decades off. Actually, a decade.
No,
Actually,
we're farther away than that. It's really
2
difficult to do.
decades. Nah, 2 decades to me sounds a lot closer. But either way, so subliminal meaning. Give me a clear, concise definition of subliminal. Sorry,
Liminal. So
liminal.
liminal experience or a liminal space is basically like a liminal experience is just a feeling of unease or disorientation as part of going through a transition. And it's general. It's because you can have all sorts of liminal experiences, but like an easy example there would be like if you're moving to a new city, then like your first couple weeks in that city, you're going to have this unease at the transition that you're going through of discovering new things and feeling out of place. And
Which okay, on that note, that liminal experience where things are new and displaced and you're uncomfortable because you don't know your position in because things are changing and things aren't changing, but your role in that world is new. So you're your personal role is changing. I have always hated that experience in the moment and looked back and reflected on it very positively afterwards. Right? Like my experience in Charleston, I fucking hated it in the moment. I don't know if you remember, we moved down there and I woke up at 7:00 in the morning and I sent emails and resumes for the first hour or two of the day. Then I got up and exercised, went for a swim, and then I put on a full suit and walked business to business and handed up my resume. That was a miserable time for me. It was a miserable time for me. I was worried. I was running out of money. I was broke. In retrospect, I was like, that was the fucking life. I used to wake up at 7:00 in the morning or earlier and do computer work and then work out and go for a swim. That sounds fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's a weird one because like oftentimes like when you're going through a liminal experience, like it's one of those ones where you're often at your most vulnerable and it's you feel unease and disoriented and you don't really feel like you have a direction. But when I think back to periods in my life that were like that, I look back at them positively because of the potential that was there, and that's part of like what like because it's a transition. You're always moving, like there's always potential, and you can feel that like something's about to happen.
I like that aspect of liminality. Where do you want to go with the liminality topic outside of naming 7 movies?
Well,
I'm curious.
like I'm thinking about just conversations that I've had with people recently and how like a lot of times the things that stick with us the most are the things that come from when we were in a liminal state.
Where change was happening and certainty was limited.
Yeah, I feel like some of your most salient experiences come from when you are going through something like that. Where, and like another example, so like for example, my buddy who's dating, like he's in a liminal state right now where he's getting to redo his entire apartment because like his girlfriend had a whole bunch of animals and there was a kid living there, so now he gets to like remake his apartment the way he wants with only him there, and he's meeting all these new people, and it's a period of uncertainty for him because he doesn't know what he wants or what he's looking for in a relationship. But at the same time, there's a ton of potential because he can meet anybody and he can do anything.
That is, but in the moment,
And that's why it's also scary.
But in the moment, that's why it's scary, because you are like trying to purge old memories out of the space. You're trying to create a new space, but you don't know what that new space should be or needs to be. And you do have this unlimited number of possibilities, but you also have this fear of the possibilities that you don't want to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's why it's not overall a good experience. Now, when you look at it retrospectively, it is whatever it is what brought you to the here and now. So you can look on that. Arguably, the majority will look back at that as a positive experience because most people are happy with the here and now.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. You got a bunch of movies listed. We got about 6 minutes left. You want to run through these movies and tell me how liminality plays a role in these? Because I think these are cool movies, and anybody listening should listen to the movies.
Well, off the top of my head, I'm not looking at the document right now, but Fight Club is a super liminal movie because it starts off with the narrator's apartment getting blown up and him moving in with somebody that he met on an airplane.
And his apartment was a pristine version of what he thought he wanted his life to be. It effectively looked like an apartment out of an IKEA catalog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he ends up like it literally detonates. His entire life detonates.
All right, next movie.
Truman Show. Like the entire movie is about the transition of Truman going from being a TV character to becoming a person.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know the movie, The Truman Show, it's about basically a dude was born, and there were hidden cameras and cameras all around his life, and those cameras projected the image to the greater country outside of his realm.
His entire life was a TV show.
And
every minute of his life, he was on TV, and he was the only one who didn't know it.
yeah, it's so weird to think about. I think it's very cool. I wish we could actually do that in real life. We have we have not done that.
I'm glad we haven't done that.
Me as well. It would be cool to do, but it would also be cruelty, right? Like it'd be cool to go to the Coliseum and watch people chop each other's heads off. Yes and no, but I mean,
I also think that
it wouldn't be cool for that.
Jim Carrey's best role by a mile.
Well, he plays the most sane character that he's ever played. So,
but just the way he navigates, like you feel like if you were in the same position as the character in the movie, you could see yourself acting that way.
All right, you got 4 more movies. Throw them out there, cool. We got 4 minutes left.
4 minutes next. American Beauty.
That's very liminal.
Agree?
That's very liminal. There's a guy that's going through a transition in his life. He goes from an unhappy husband who is living a life that isn't quite in line with where he needs to be. He kind of followed what his perception of the American dream was, and he's not where he needs to be. And he's realizing how off course he is. So he's trying to redirect. And with that redirection, uproots his entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Next movie.
Being John Malkovich. It's all about transitioning into being another person.
Yeah, I have that on VHS, actually. I told you I'm building out a VHS center in my house. I'll tell you about that later. I got a whole bunch of VHS movies. I don't know how that fits into the liminal spaces in films,
it's
but it is
like a little pathway that you take into John Malkovich's mind,
into somebody else's life. Yeah.
Lost in Translation. I have actually not seen that movie.
Are you kidding me?
No, like when I put that one on there, I was like, I know of this movie. And I was like, I can't believe I've never watched this. This is something I need to do.
Bill Murray movie was one of my favorite actors. He's in Japan, which is one of the coolest places I visited. And it's just about experiencing a foreign land and being disconnected from your life. And then meeting somebody in that foreign land that has a perceived similar life experience to you, but is much younger. And then building a bond. And then a little bit of drama that happens because bonds are not perfect, but interpreting that world that's effectively backwards, right? Like if you and I separately went to the upside down land where everything was opposite, we'd be fucking lost. Mm-hmm. And then we ran into each other who had a shared experience in reality. We'd be able to comprehend the upside down a little bit better together, and we have comfort in doing it together. It's
like whenever you're traveling abroad and you meet another American, you're almost immediately friends just because you have somebody that you can relate to.
I'll tell you one thing. If I'm in New York City and I walk into somebody in the sidewalk or they stop and I'm like, yo, what are you doing here? Where are you from? They're like, oh, I'm from Rhode Island. I'd be like, yeah, go the fuck back to Rhode Island, jackass. What the fuck are you doing here? You're stopping on the sidewalk.
But if you're in Sweden and you meet somebody from Rhode Island.
If I'm in Sweden and I see somebody or I hear somebody on the train or some shit that's got an American accent, I'm like, oh, where are you from? They're like, oh, we're from Rhode Island. Instantly, we're just best friends, which is the weirdest thing. I don't know how that plays into liminality.
Not directly, but.
I mean, yeah, you could derive. All right, we are out of time. Anything else you want to add before we ask people to subscribe to the podcast? Apple, Spotify, Anchor, any audio podcast platform that you're on, make sure you subscribe. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to YouTube, interact with the YouTube video, comment, give us a thumbs up. James? Nothing. Damn, man, that's boring. On that note, thank you all for joining us, and adios. This is The Other End. Thank you for making it here. If you made it this far, now is the time to subscribe. See you next time.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.